Hello, I'm Heather Lockett, and this is Lasting Conversations. Sarah Palmer joins us today. Hi, Sarah.
Hello, Heather.
Sarah is a Chief Compassion Officer. She's the proprietor of Dovecot Farm here in Florida. She's an absolute lover of animals, a sound healer, and a joy, an absolute joy. And when we first met a few years ago, we just clicked and hit it off. I've been out to her land on the farm, and it is really, really special. And I want to go ahead and start there as a matter of fact, and we'll get into your big main message. Tell us about the land and what it is that you've been doing out at Dovecot.
Absolutely. And it's a wonderful question because I really do feel that the land discovered me. It was a really big calling. It happened about 7 years ago. Obviously, you can tell by my accent that I'm not from here. Mm-hmm. I'm from London originally, born and bred Londoner. But I've lived in Florida. I've lived in America for 10 years. My journey towards Loxahatchee Groves happened over time. And I used to just drive around and look at properties and look at the land and just really kind of tap into the energetic offering of the space. And eventually this piece of land, which is now called Dovecot Farm, found me. It was a really strange experience because I was looking for land. So I was obviously manifesting the space to come towards me. And I was looking at a piece of land nearby, and my phone alerted me to a very good drop in price on this equestrian space. And I had my realtor in the car, and we literally drove down that road, and the rest is history. It was a short sale. It was a very, should we say, there was a lot of wear and tear on the land, and she was really in need of tender, loving care. So it took us about a year to turn her around in every sense. But we've got 10 acres, just over 10 acres, and Dovecot Farm is home to horses, a donkey, cats, and the many birds who come to visit.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. And there is a home there and a barn and an outbuilding. Did you build all of that yourself, or was some of that there already?
It was all there. Mm-hmm. The barn, I think, has probably been around since the 1980s, and has been extended in different ways. And we had to really renovate the barn considerably, mainly because it's a wooden pole barn, and the termites had, done quite a good job. Yeah, done their thing over the years. The house is a 1978 house, and I refer to her as an older lady, and I give her a lot of respect.
A lady of a certain age.
Absolutely. Yes. And obviously our land is ancient. Our lands and our trees have been there for some of them since the beginning of time. But we'll talk a bit more about the trees. We've had a lot of changes on our property line, which it's been quite devastating over the last 2 years. And I think you probably see that when you come back and visit.
Oh, I got a little goosebump there. The whole area is renovated. We'll use that as a nice term.
It's certainly not development, that's for sure.
Okay.
They might be classifying it as development, but it's not development in terms of the amount of tree loss.
It's massive, which then also gets into the animals. And one of the last times we saw each other at the end of 19 into 2020, there had been some coyotes coming on property, and now they're indigenous, but what's been happening to a lot of places as land does get developed and is that they come into neighborhoods, and they've been coming into suburbia and doing their thing. But you had some interesting encounters with the coyotes on your property back then.
Yes, we did. Unfortunately, there's a hierarchy within the world of predators and prey. I do believe that the coyotes did take one of our cats, which was very sad because obviously, we get very close to our domesticated animals. But then it's also about recognizing the rights of all animals, isn't it? Coyotes have been around since the beginning of goodness knows how long, thousands of years, no doubt.
Right.
When we believe that humans have had a relationship with horses for over 6,000 years, although some dispute that it's much longer. And I tend to agree that we've had a relationship with animals for thousands and thousands of years.
We absolutely have. And your vision when you bought the property has it always been for healing? because a lot of what you were doing there had to do with the horses being, first of all, that you were a sanctuary for horses, and also a retreat center, a place for people to come and have some equine therapy and all these sorts of wonderful treatments and relaxation. So was that your intention all along for finding that space?
The initial intention was really about starting a platform. And I wasn't 100% sure as to what that platform would do. I felt a sense of community. I felt a sense of connection. In terms of the modalities, it really evolved over time. And it started with the horses. I knew that I wanted to bring in a form of therapy, which is called equine facilitated learning and coaching. It's actually, I'm not a therapist, and I'm a coach by trade and by certification. It is very close to the therapeutic model. I later became certified in a couple of other programs, such as IGALA, which is the most recognized one in the world. But then as my heart opened, and as I started practicing more mindfulness in nature, other modalities really came my way. And so I became certified in mindfulness in nature. And I love that piece. I love to be able to take people on a short walk around the property and to practice silent meditation and to acknowledge the many sentients that we have that call Dovecot Farm home. And later I incorporated breathing techniques. I'm certified in HeartMath, which I absolutely love. The horses love it too. I think all of the animals love it. And then brought in other pieces. I really do, Heather, I do believe that there's a very big overlap between leadership and wellness, wellness and leadership. And to be able to have discussions about self-awareness is really important. So I became certified in DISC, which is a really fascinating tool and assessment. So that's something else that
And what is that? Go ahead and say.
DISC, D-I-S-C, is based on Jungian theory. So it gives you an insight into your extrovert and your introvert behaviors, of which we all have a D score, which stands for domineering, dominance. We all have an I, which stands for interactivity, engagement. We have a score on S, which is stability, nurturing behavior. And then we have a score on C, which is about compliance, rules and regulations. And interestingly, all our animals display their own version of the DISC. So I think it's a lovely tool to be able to assess our animals and what they're telling us.
You know, so last week we were speaking with Kathy Andio about decluttering and organizing and fitness and how it all melds together, and actually being present with ourselves and being in the breath and being mindful and forest bathing and being out in nature and being able to take a breath, and which segues perfectly to what you were just now talking about. And here we are entering into 2023. And especially in the season that's been so full of rush for many, and travel and all the different areas where we can start to feel stressed and disconnected. So I want you to go ahead and leap right into the land, the sentient, what nature is and how you are finding nature calls.
Absolutely. And you said the key word, which is sentient. I think I was first introduced to that word and the meaning when I was doing a program in Colorado, and the horses are described as sentient, which really means that they have a range of emotions, just like you and I. And for anybody listening in, we know that our pets, our dogs, our horses, our cats, others who share our space and our heart space, they do have different emotions.
Right.
Okay. We have a donkey called Michael. We used to have 2 donkeys, and unfortunately one died. Gabriel died about 2 years ago. And it was just heartbreaking to see the sense of loss and grieving that Michael displayed.
Wow.
And at one point he lay down on the ground. He refused to eat his food. And I seriously thought that I was going to lose another one. So I looked at
Gabriel was such a...
you remember him?
I do. And you just loved him. But he was such a... there's certain words that are coming up, which is kind of funny, but he had that zap, right? Like he was his own wild child.
He
Right.
came to us with the name Bronco.
Right. He was his own wild child,
I know.
full of piss and vinegar.
Yeah.
Right. That's what's coming through.
But he
he's full of
really
it.
softened in the 2 years that we got to know him.
Right.
And
he was a character. You loved him. You loved him.
We learned to trust each other.
Yeah.
And he unfortunately, he became ill and we were not sure what he was experiencing. It was clear later that it was a neurological disease that he had.
Oh.
It was really sad to lose him. And I cried just as much as Michael cried. But then I looked at my herd and I thought, who is it in my herd? And this goes back to the DISC language.
Okay.
Who is the most nurturing? So who is the highest S within my herd? Who's going to be the nurse for Michael? And I looked at the herd and I thought, it has to be Montana because she's so sweet, so very nurturing.
One of your horses.
One of our horses.
Mm-hmm.
And so I brought Montana and to be with Michael in his time of need. And he instantly got up and perked up and started eating again.
Wow.
So just a beautiful example of how sentience is integral to all of our animal beings. So much so, I mean, I really do feel that let's take it to the next level. And you mentioned forest bathing, of which I'm very keen on. The Japanese call it Shinrin-yoku, don't they? I mean, my absolute thing on my bucket list is to go to Japan one day and to do a forest bathing course. Mm-hmm. It really would be amazing. But we have many opportunities to do it here in Palm Beach County, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have to go to Japan to do some forest bathing.
And it can be anywhere in the world, in the middle of your own city, really. You can find a spot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that our trees are wonderfully sentient. Mm-hmm. I've been reading some amazing books by tree experts. And what is astonishing is that if you look at the first movie, Avatar, and the tree role, that actually comes from a lot of the books that have been written by people who have been really experienced in tree nurturing and understanding that in many forests, there's a mother tree. Mm. And that mother tree, there's such a level of intelligence amongst the network of trees. And this is why I'm very totally devastated by tree loss and by deforestation, because trees communicate with each other. They have this network of communication all under our feet.
Well, the whole rooting system is complete communication.
Yes. And they share information, they share nutrients. Mm-hmm. So when the mother tree, if she's got a disease, she will share her wisdom to the siblings, to the family of network. So incredible. Mm-hmm. One of the things, Heather, that has come up in my world is the Haudenosaunee address to the natural world. And I think this is a wonderful gratitude practice.
And what's that called again?
Haudenosaunee. One of the tribal groups up near Buffalo, I believe, in that area. And it's something that is handed down from members to members, but they teach the children this address to the natural world, whereby every piece in the ecosystem they send a greeting and a thanks, from the rivers to the trees, to the animals, to the medicine plants. And I just think it's a wonderful piece to really embrace, because everything does work in harmony. And I have to say, I'm very worried about the environmental issues that we're facing.
Well, and that leads into our seas and the sky. And I know there are a lot of beautiful people doing some very good works to rethink how we are treating our home, Mother Earth.
Yes.
Right. And nature is very resilient. Nature also, I always get the sense that nature knows what it's doing. So if we're in the middle of this giant evolutionary cycle, things have to move along and decay, and like we have fall, winter, spring, we have seasons. So some things do decay to make room for the new. That's not to say what has been and become mindless just for the sake of we're going to build the crap out of everything, mm-hmm. right? Without replacing. Mm-hmm. So yes, we're humans. We get to have homes here. But how can we be more mindful to then replace and replenish and even rethink how we're building our homes themselves to be a lot more sentient, right? Which is different than a smart home, but a sentient home, a real smart home. So how is that landing for you from what we're talking about?
I mean, I do feel that sentience, the term, needs to be recognized, and that's a legal decision that needs to take place at the highest level.
Okay.
So if you were to look at the United Kingdom, they have what is called the sentience, some people pronounce it differently, sentience bill. And this is something that you will find on the UK government site. And it's all about recognizing the rights of nature. And it needs to be recognized by countries at the highest level. And that there are many countries who do recognize sentient animals, nature, the rights of nature, and there are those that do not. So as an example, now the UK have legal rules, legal laws, whereby if you were to, if you're a farmer or if you're a fisherman, you have to be very careful about how you slaughter animals. As an example, you're not allowed to take a lobster and throw that lobster into a big pot of boiling water, because that is considered absolutely cruel. So now you've got to enforce that. So it's one thing to have rules in place. It's another thing to make sure that those rules are followed.
I see.
Do we have that level of appreciation in America? Not yet. I don't think sentience really is recognized and not as deemed as important. I think it's changing. So the rights of animals are being looked at. And a good example, obviously, let's talk about this. We're very close to an equestrian epicenter. Wellington brings all sorts of equestrians here in the polo, the show jumping, the dressage world. And it was recently deemed by the FEI, Fédération Équitation Internationale, I believe, is the acronym for the International Equestrian Association, that horses who have, they have hair around their muzzles, whiskers like cats, the dressage and others, the equestrian world used to cut it off. And these are sensory tools for an animal to be able to determine space, and they use their whiskers a lot, not just in the wild, but in every interaction. And so now it's illegal to cut and to shave those whiskers off.
Nice.
So that's just a little example in terms of there are little steps of improvement that are being made.
Nice. And you have created a nonprofit around all these notions and your belief system.
Yeah, absolutely. And guess what? It's called Sentience Matters.
Okay.
Because I really do believe that sentience matters. And a lot of the work that I was doing in 2021, post-COVID, was about recognizing the rights of some of the workers who, the nurses, the healthcare practitioners. There's a really high suicide rate amongst our nurses, our doctors.
It's a high pressure cooker.
Yes.
Profession.
Absolutely.
Right.
And they, these people really kept us going.
Yes.
Throughout COVID and post-COVID.
Right.
But they've had a lot of issues, challenges, emotional issues. Some call it compassion fatigue. And I really wanted to reach out to them. So I designed a program called Barn to Bedside. And I incorporated a lot of what we do at the farm, such as the equine interactions, the sound healing, mindfulness in nature. And these are all tools that can be handed down to people to help them on their everyday journey of dealing with life. But especially dealing with the high stressful job that they have. So it kind of became clear throughout 2021 that I needed to establish a non-profit entity to continue that work. So Sentience Matters was born. And a lot of it is about community. It is about connection. And it's about supporting those who need a lot of help. And if you look at not just the nurses and the doctors, I worry about our children who went through a pandemic, who were at home, who didn't have that level of social interaction for 2 years of their lives. And I think that a lot of the skills that I was teaching the nurses can absolutely be transferred to our youth as well.
Well, I can imagine that teachers and pretty much all the grown-ups and the children would have so much fun coming out to a farm, any farm, but your Dovecot Farm, doing these programs. And what's beautiful, what has blossomed when the schools were one of the industries, if you will, that shut down in 2020, what that did was reimagine education. So now there are so many more little pod schools, there are home schools, there are small private schools where people can find little programs that you're doing, or instead of being in any one building, they're going out and finding other ways to learn and be together. And so having programs such as yourself, there's another woman that does water keepers, and she's got kids out in waters out in the lagoon and playing with minnows and fish. And Melissa, we'll have a chat with Melissa. I think you've met her before. So that it's such a wonderful opportunity so that the kids are still thriving, or they have an avenue to which to do that. And that the teachers themselves hopefully can also find respite and find a new way that they can then teach, but have that care and comfort and joy for themselves. Because like you said, it's been a ball of wax for everybody. Definitely. The last couple of years.
Yes. No, and I think these are all wonderful initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need to embrace them for sure, because I don't think one size fits all when it comes to teaching.
Absolutely.
So isn't it? It's great that we've got this kind of expansive view of what can be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really promising. I do feel, however, that one of the areas that Sentience Matters is wanting to encourage is a step back into the forest.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of our kids, and I can talk from my own experience, I've got a soon-to-be 14-year-old son,
mm-hmm.
an 11-year-old son, who are highly addicted to their gadgets. However much we try, we think that we're taking it away from them.
But they've been raised, they've been, yes, they are the screen generation.
Absolutely.
They are the screen generation.
It's very challenging to get them to go out and play like we did when we were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But I do feel that nature has so many healing properties, and to be able to give those, that it's like a skill set and a heart set, to be able to get the kids to get out away from their gadgets, even for a short while,
mm-hmm.
and to be in nature is incredibly healing.
Well, do they like the farm? Do they like playing with animals? Or is that actually, they are different humans who will enjoy different things?
Well, my 14-year-old doesn't like the farm. He's very rebellious and just resists it completely. My 11-year-old is much more interested in it. I question how long that will last. So yeah, a lot of the programs that I would like to do in the future at the farm is to get youths to come out and to teach them breathing techniques, to teach them how to engage with sentience.
Mm-hmm.
And to, have maybe some more kind of communication, leadership programming for them. So watch this space. The big change for me, Heather, is that I'm extending my program to a little bit further than Dovecot Farm,
mm-hmm.
the Equestrian Retreat in Loxahatchee Groves. So I'm hoping to bring some of my holistic programming to a ship that I'm working for, which is called Margaritaville at Sea.
Okay.
Because I think my journey with the land started in Loxahatchee Groves, but I'm feeling the call to do this out at sea. Beautiful. When you have this expansiveness of sea
mm-hmm.
and water.
Mm-hmm.
So the horses and donkey can't come to Margaritaville at Sea, but the sound healing and the mindfulness can.
Well, at least not in person, but again, as a sentient is, they'll be with you etherically. Yes. But I love that idea of the expanse of the ocean. And that is a whole other beautiful piece of nature. And as we know, the indigenous, they honor the four corners, the four winds, earth, sea, sky, matter. I know I'm forgetting one, excuse me. But to be out in the ocean, yes, with the fish and the ocean beings,
mm-hmm.
that's a beautiful thing too. And so many of us find the ocean and the sea air and the special ionic salt water and salt air. So rejuvenating.
Absolutely.
It's so rejuvenating. So I love that idea.
Yes.
And will you do that with your crystal bowls or with other meditations that you're going to do?
A bit of both, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got this. So Margaritaville at Sea has a spa called the St. Somewhere Spa. So it's all in Jimmy Buffett language. So there's a nice Zen room there, which I think has got a lot of potential for bringing the crystal singing bowls. And I'm just so keen to do this trip at some point so that, to line up all the different chakra bowls and to incorporate some of the other musical instruments that I love, the chimes, bit of drumming. And
how about a gong?
Yeah, I've got a handheld one. I'll bring it. Yes. Let's do some gonging.
Over the sea.
And just to have that blue expansiveness around us, I think it could be a really powerful experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a lot of fun.
So that's going to happen throughout 2023. I'm looking forward to that.
So, which kind of brings me to joy. And usually I love circling back to where to find the joy. There's so many things that we can be worried about. We can be worried about devastation and this and this. But where do you see the joy and how do you find joy each day? Probably with your animals. And I know I will touch on, because you lost some other horses as well. So you've had quite a bit of loss on the farm.
Oh, yes.
And that takes an adjustment.
Yeah. Our herd has halved in 2 years.
Wow.
Yes.
And part of your website, you speak of resilience. So maybe let's tie that together. Where does resilience blend into joy? Let's go there.
So there's an interesting view on resilience as per HeartMath.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were to consider that we are a battery, and when we are low on energy, our resilience battery has come, to 10%. It's almost like saying that's the last, it's almost, you need to charge it instantly. But it's not just, resilience isn't just about recognizing when you're down. Resilience is also recognizing when you are okay and you're feeling strong, that level of strength. But that is the time to focus in on your breathing techniques, because you need to keep the battery filled.
Well, we also have a connotation that resilience could mean stiff upper lip, of remaining rigid and strong and, in the face of and all of that. There's a flavor to that, which is okay. But really resilience is more of a bamboo. You sway.
Yes.
You acknowledge, okay, it's part of a shit show right now. And yet, like you were saying, you come back to that breath, and the resilience can come from a strength, not a rigidity.
Yes. So I think the big HeartMath view is resilience isn't just the falling down and scraping yourself off and getting back up again. It's about preparing for those times, acknowledging that we all have difficult times at some point in our lives. It's not, anything and everything isn't just a straight line.
Right.
So the river meanders, right? So the breath work is integral to this philosophy of preparing for the tough times, because when you do breath work continuously, and it's not about making it a chore, but it's about doing it as a well-being tool in your toolbox.
Right.
So that when you come to those difficult moments, you can respond with a sense of, I can deal with this.
Right.
Yeah. So I think resilience is really important for all of us. The herd display a lot of resilience by being with each other. So just like us, they're wonderful social creatures. So, some countries, this is really interesting. If you have a guinea pig, I think in Amsterdam, it's illegal just to have one. You have to have two.
Oh, to have a family.
Yeah. Because animals need each other. They need company. They need a social structure.
I hear people all the time saying, I need a second dog or a second cat at least.
Yeah. And it goes back to Michael the donkey. I knew that he needed company. So his company, Montana, the sweet nurturing one, goes and spends Saturday night with him once in a while.
Are they all in the same paddock? Do they pal around in the same corral area? Or
the horses do. And honestly, my understanding of herd is very important, because I suppose it's different because my horses are not very expensive show horses. But I find that they need to be together. They need to run together. They need to care for each other. They need to, and even from the sense of being in a stall, the way I've designed the farm is with their compassionate well-being in every sense. So they can see each other, they can sniff each other. Mm-hmm. And then ultimately they get to spend playtime with each other every day.
Well, there it is, the playtime. And that brings us back to the joyful spot. So by doing how do you see 23 in the joyful spot?
Yeah. Well, I think what gives me joy is caring for animals, sharing the farm, sharing our values with the farm, of the farm with others, and to be able to feel that, at least we are helping people, we're supporting people. So I think that gives us joy. I think that's the level of reward from doing this, for sure. And then I think what will be interesting in terms of, we're taking what has been a really lovely program at Dovecot Farm and seeing if we can take some of those elements and to bring it to the rest of the natural world, i.e. on a ship in the middle of the Straits of Florida. Mm-hmm. That should be quite fun.
That should be very fun. Really fun.
Yeah.
And people coming to visit. Is there anything else? Any other pearls you'd love to put out there?
I think this really sums it up, to be honest, Heather. I'd love to see sentience matters higher up the agenda in everyone's books, everyone's heart space. It's going to take a while, I think, for people to fully acknowledge that animals have rights. There are pockets of this understanding, but I think the message needs to get bigger and stronger and louder. So I'm very glad to have been invited today.
Sarah Palmer, thank you so much for stopping in. This has been a joy for me to have this conversation. And thank you all for listening. Please be sure to like, follow, review, and share this podcast. And if you'd like to be part of the conversation, send emails to podcasts@lastingconversations.com and follow us on Facebook. This is Lasting Conversations. We get to the heart of everything.